right, let's get started today. Let's see if more people go, but I'm recording this, so we'll see how it goes. We're going to start the second week of Flutter, so Unit 7 here, and look at some common Flutter kind of controls or widgets, and then look at creating and using lists in Flutter. And how we do declare lists, which are like arrays, and also use a widget controller called a list view for this. One of the challenges here is that there are hundreds of widgets in Flutter. A bunch of them are pre-built, Flutter ones that Flutter has, and then there's lots of others that other people have developed here. And it's almost overwhelming. So what I try to do here is create a list of some of the common widgets we will see here. I'm actually going to maybe open this up in its new window here so we can see that. These are just some of the common widgets out there. In each one, I just have a link to the manual about it. So like here, if I look under like column, to go out to the column widget class and show you some code on how to use that widget for it. It might have video. Certainly, if it's been a widget of the week, it'll be that video will be linked in here also for this. So again, like I say, there are lots of Flutter widgets. If you kind of look on the left-hand side, there are just so many of them here. So I think what I want to do is just kind of play around with this a little bit today. And try out a couple of these widgets for this. So why don't you create a new Flutter project that we can eventually we'll put our lists in there. We'll use this to display lists. But for now, I'm just going to do a new Flutter project. And yeah, I have to remember the project name has to be lowercase. Okay. I'm going to leave it in Kotlin. Like I say, I won't even generally see that language there. I'm going to just do the Android and the web to start with. Because again, for testing purposes, that's all I need here. So now remember, this will create a kind of default Flutter project, which we can edit and look at there. So that's what I want to work on today. So I'm going to close the README file, and then under lib main.dart is the file. And again, when I'm getting started here, it has lots of these comments. I like to just kind of delete some of these comments so I can get things a little smaller. So again, main calls my app. My app is here. This is all kind of boilerplate code. We have a stateful widget here. And that creates a state, and my home page state, this is where my code actually goes here. So again, so at that point, I'm going to start putting my code. Right now there's a counter, there's an increment counter method, and then this is the build method. Every widget has a build method that returns a widget generally here. So again, I'm going to get rid of some of this code so I can see it a little better. Oops. So by default, this uses a scaffold widget, which is pretty common. Again, this will be just the layout of the widget. In fact, I can try to get this up and running. I'm going to run this while I'm editing it to make sure I don't delete anything. I'm going to run it on Chrome, not on Windows, because I didn't enable Windows. So I'm going to run it on Chrome or some other browser. And so again, the scaffold will just be the kind of general layout for most of our apps. So we'll almost always use a scaffold. It'll have an app bar at the top often, and then the body will be the main part. And this is where we'll put things. Right now we have a center widget and a column widget for this. So here's it starting up. I'll make it a little smaller here. So I can see, okay. And again, here's my little widget, my little app. I can click the button and increase. So it's still running. And again, this is the layout. This is the app bar at the top. This is my centered text here. So I've got the center here. I have a column layout. And so I set a property the max horizontal alignment to center, or the main axis alignment to center here, and then the children here. So again, you might want to play with it. What happens if you don't have this? This is an optional field. Comment that out and see what happens. What happens? Can you get rid of this center widget there? Here's the end of it. What do you need that center widget? What does? Now, when you're working with these widgets, we have to watch. So the center widget has a child property, and that's the column. So I want to delete all that, and then delete this if I want to get rid of it. But I want to keep this center and column for now, and I'm just going to add some widgets here. The column has a list of children. It has these two children now here. I'm going to combine this one all in one line so it's a little easier to see. Oops. Okay, so basically right now I have two text widgets, a constant one and then a one that I'm updating here. I'm going to add some other widgets in here. So again, this is within my square bracket. So why don't you do the same thing, go back to our code, our common widgets, and look at what, try to stick some other widgets here. Like a good place to start is just a container here. Just grab that container code, and you can add a container to this. And then comma, again, we're in a list, we're in an array, a list of things. So every item has to have a comma after it. 1, 2, 3, here's my column here. And I can see what that does. Just displays an orange box up here. I can try changing, the size and the width. I can add another container here. And again, change the size, the height, or the width. Change the color. Colors.amber, and then you can specify like how dark it'll be. So if I make this lighter, it'll just be a lighter color of amber. And I wait a sec, it should update that. So again, go through this, look at some of these. I wouldn't necessarily worry about the layout widget, but some of these widgets that you can put in here. There may be a text or a rich text widget, an image or an icon, a card. We'll do a card. I'll do a card widget in just a sec to see what that's like here. Another thing you can be doing is working with ChatGPT. on here. So like right now, I often use ChatGPT for specific questions. So right now I have this and I don't have a space between these two containers. I want to add a space there. I don't know what's the way. And problem is there are probably 5 different ways of doing that. So I'm actually going to take this code. I'm going to take this whole class, not the whole, well, I could do the whole file, but I'm just going to take my stateful class here and dump that into ChatGPT. And just ask what are some ways to add spaces between elements in my column in this code. And I'm just going to paste my code in there and see what it suggests. So the first thing it suggests is a size box. And if I go to my common widgets, that's one of these common widgets here. I can click on that. Should set that up so it goes. So here's the size box. It's been a widget of the week. Oh, so I always love to watch the widget of the week videos. It was number 29.
Like this column should obviously be 200 pixels wide, but more or less. That's easy. Just wrap the bottom with a side box and give the width in pixels. You can also write height, the control of the size. There, pixel effect. Sidebox is a widget with a specific size that directs its child to also have that size. What if you tell the sidebox to have infinite size in the direction? Does it go to infinity and beyond? No, unfortunately. It just expands as much as foreign allows. If you put infinity in both dimensions, then the child fills the available space. There's a handy shortcut for this. Sidebox self-expand. You can use sidebox without a child. It will not render anything, but it will still take out the space. Wait for any gaps between widgets. For more info with sidebox and all.
Well, that was very exciting. That just made my day there. So again, size box was one thing we're suggesting. So I can try that out. I could add, so if I look at my common widgets there, size box, this is one without a child widget. So again, I can go in here and like, I have these two containers with no space between them. I'm going to do a container and then I'm going to do a size box. I guess I need a comma after that. And then look over here and it'll put that, and I can change, maybe I don't want 100, maybe I want 30 in between, and I'll draw that. So again, size box is one way. And this is the way I don't know how you, if those things, but this is what I find when learning a new thing. I like to kind of work with some code, reading some documentation, and also asking AI for things back and forth to kind of direct where I'm at. So again, I asked it, one way is a size box. I just did that. Padding, I've never really understood padding, so I might want to look some more at that. It is putting padding around a text box here. And that looks kind of complicated to get it all in there. So if I go back in here, like if I want this 2, I want some more padding around that 2, I could do that there. I could put in a padding. Now, it's really common to wrap widgets with other widgets like padding. So I can actually right click on it and choose show context actions. And there's a wrap with padding. And it'll wrap this widget, stick that widget in as the child and put a padding around it. And then I can put in some amount here. I can increase this to make it more obvious. And then it'll put padding around that text for us. So again, if you're at some widget here and I want to wrap it, I can right click on it, show context, or Alt Enter. And again, you can wrap it in all of these things here. So padding is just one of them we often wrap it in. So, okay, so that was another one. Space, use spacer here. So I can just put space between these. It's kind of like my size box, it looks like. Another one is my main alignment. It talks about some different ones, and it says I already have a main axis alignment, so that if this is a column that's vertical alignment, I'm centering it here. I can change this to, what does it say? I can change this to space evenly, for example, instead of center. So right now it's centering it on the screen. I'm now going to spread it out on the screen, so it's not just in the center of the screen. So, and again, main axis alignment for a column is up and down. So I'm going to say space evenly, and it'll space vertically the elements there. So if I look at my thing now, it spread things out here all the time for this. And then I don't really need like this size box, then I could actually get rid of that. I'm just going to comment that out. So then everything's spaced evenly, although I do have extra padding around this. There's space evenly spaced between, space around. Let's see, what does space between do if I did the column alignment to space between? Space between puts even spaces between, but nothing at the top or the bottom. So again, the very top, well, the first one's at the very top, the bottom one's at the very bottom. I don't like that. I'm going to go back to space evenly and let it do that. So again, that's another way. So again, we've mentioned a little bit the padding widget. We haven't done the container widget. Size box we mentioned. Center, we have a center here to center things like left and right here. So there's actually a center one here. I could try getting rid of that center to see what it does here. So what happens if I get rid of this center widget here? So to get rid of that, I need to delete that. And here, now, I don't know if there's an option to remove this. Yeah, there is a remove this widget option. I think that would do it all. I'm just going to do it by hand this first time. So again, I want to delete center and then the child attribute. And then down here, I'll have to watch where the center is. I'll want to delete that parenthesis and comma there. So delete this. And then down here, delete one of these. And then I think I've got everything lined up correctly. It's hard to make sure you've got all your parentheses and commas lined up. That's why it's almost easier when doing some of the stuff like that to do the, to right click. And if you want to remove it, just say remove this widget or something like that. So now I've redone this, and now it's all off to the left a little bit. So again, it's centered within the column, but the column is off to the left here. So, and again, if I want to center back, I could right click on here, do show context and say wrap with center. It'll put a center. As a child, it'll put the comma, and it should update, and now it'll be centered. As far as like input, I think we looked a little bit as a text field last time. And remember with those, we had to create a variable, a controller variable that handles it. And a lot of these are similar to that. We have elevated button, which is our standard button. And inside that, we have a widget. We usually have a text widget. It can be an icon there. And then on press, and we define some method that we run when that button is pressed. Text button here, you can add on press or stuff like that. Drop down button, checkbox, and a switch are all some of the available ones. So as far as display goes, text or rich text, text span, graphics or icons or images that we can display. So. So I think I'll just let you play with this for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we'll do the lists. I think we're going to talk about Dart a little bit before then, but why don't you play with this for a few minutes, and then we'll do the lists. Next, we're going to look at lists, but before then, I thought we'd talk a little bit about Dart. We're using Dart here, and we haven't really talked at all about Dart. So let's talk a little bit about Dart here, and I have some resources introducing you to Dart here. There's a collab on introducing Dart to Java developers. The first part of this is okay. I don't know if I love the later parts. Again, talks about creating a simple class in Dart. And a lot of this class stuff will be very similar between Java and Dart here, or JavaScript and Dart. Dart, a lot of stuff created in Dart are kind of modeled after JavaScript for this stuff. So it talks about that and talks about adding parameters there, how you can add optional parameters, how do you add things to write things out as a string and stuff like that here. So that's somewhat interesting. Dart has some really interesting ways of declaring parameters where you can use positional parameters just like Java, or I think if you put them in curly brackets like this, you can do optional name parameters or optional positional parameters if you use square brackets around your parameters. So, so that's one. Dart cheat sheet actually I think is a nice one. It walks through some of the basics. One thing we will see some is string interpolation here. So if you have a string, you can write code right in that string. This reminds me of JavaScript, like HTML. Is it JavaScript? I don't remember where I've seen this. Again, where you can have some text and then you can just do a $ parenthesis, brace, and then anything inside that brace is going to be code that is executed. So if you're writing out a string, you can do something. So for example, in this code, we have our counter here. If we wanted to print out that counter, I could say print counter is, and then I can just do that. I can just say counter is, and then $ and then counter here. Oops. And I'll print out the counter. So again, this putting a $ inside a string says X, the next part is going to be a code. Now it'll do one, if it's just one variable, you can just do it that way. But if it's an expression or whatever, you have to put that expression inside curly brackets or braces here. So you do something like that, especially if you're going to do something with the counter or call another method like they're doing here for that. So we will run into null variables a lot here. Null safety is a big thing. So the null reference error is a really common and costly problem in Java, where you have null objects and then you dereference them. You say, so, employee dot and employee is null, and then your whole thing crashes because your employee is null there. So by default in in Dart, you can't have null variables, and every variable is an object here. So if I say int a, I can't set it equal to null. I can't declare a variable without assigning it a value. It has to be assigned. So up here, I say int counter equals 0. I can't, I can't say like string name. That's going to give me an error. Oops. Isn't it string? Name here. This is a non-nullable instance name, must be initialized. So I have to initialize it to declare it. If there are some rules around this, you can declare some variables as nullable. You say int question mark here. So if I wanted to say that maybe this is null, I could say string question mark. Like, I think this is a string, it might be null. So at least I always read it. So, but again, it's better to just follow the rules of null safety and stuff. And similar, there are variables for this. If you have something, you can say a equals 3 question mark. You can use these question mark to say is this a value or not? If it's null, it will do this second part. So basically, that's just saying check this first, what's on the left. If that's null, do what's on the right there. There are a couple other null safety things as far as when you're referencing an object, you can say my object dot your property. And if it might be null, you can put a question mark in there. Again, it's better to use null safety so you know that this will never be null. But again, sometimes we have code that has that way. So okay, let's see what else is in here that's yeah, positional parameters. So if you have some parameters, it's like this. If you want to have some optional ones that are positional, you can say put those in square brackets there and say int question mark for those there. And then I think there should be a thing, name parameters. So if you want name parameters, you put them in a brace there. So if we were requiring the first name and last name, but then optionally you can have the middle name here, you can put it in braces there. So then you always have to have the first name and last name, but you can add this middle name colon who. And that's when we see a lot of our widgets are defined that way. Obviously, column max main axis alignment is an optional name parameter. Children is a required parameter there. So, okay. So again, I suggest you maybe want to read some of these things in about this. Another thing I sometimes find useful is just to use an AI. Say, like, I'm learning Dart, I already know Java, and can you explain how variables are declared in Java in Dart compared to Java? And ask that. And then you can ask follow-up questions. It talks about here there's types, but we can also have this generic type var. Again, that's something similar to JavaScript has var, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Or is Python? There. Final and const here a little bit different. Type inference. Null safety, it talks a little bit about null safety. So again, you can ask that. I could ask, like, how does Dart handle arrays and lists? Is it similar to Java? So, and it should tell you that, so Dart doesn't have arrays, it only has lists. So in Java, we have arrays and array lists. Here, Dart has only one structure called a list. And so it's dynamic. So in Dart, a list is like an array list or a linked list in Java for this. We access it with the square brackets here. We can do .add. We can say num sub 0, just like an array is equal to 10. So show some common. So again, I find sometimes this sort of stuff is useful. It's also, I think, useful as you go, when you get to some point where you go, oh, how does this go? What does this Dart code do? You can ask AI to explain this Dart code to you. Okay. We mentioned null safety. The other thing I'll just mention real briefly, we'll get to later on, is asynchronous programming. So Dart has a really nice system for asynchronous programming that uses futures. So a future variable is something that it hasn't been fulfilled yet, but will be assigned later on with our async. And we have an async structure. We'll define methods as async, and we can say await to wait for this asynchronous stuff to be done there. We'll talk more about this, but this whole await, async, and futures is a nice structure for how we handle asynchronous stuff. So again, we'll get to that a little later. All right. But in a lot of ways, I don't think things will be that different. One other thing is that Dart will allow you to have methods that aren't in a class. So you can have first level methods there. Like in Java, every method has to be inside a class. But like in Python, right, you can declare a method that's not in a class. And same with Dart here for this. So I think what else? Okay, let's go on to lists. Okay, I'm going to click on this list in so when lists, we kind of mean two separate things. How do we declare on like an array-like variable here and work with it? So this is how we declare it. I'm just going to add this. I'm going to take this over and bring it into my program here and figure out what it is. So where do I declare my variables? Again, in my state, but not in a method generally. I would want to declare my variables there. But I can't have code there. My code has to be inside another method for this stuff. But I can say, so list, and then this type in between a greater than, less than, right? Looks like template. That looks really familiar. My list, the name of my variable equals, and I have to initialize it even if it's just a blank list to start with for null safety. So that sets up my list of strings. Again, if I want a list of ints, I could change that. Again, I need different values, of course, here. For this. So that's my list. Let's work with that list. I'm going to put some code. Now, where can I put code? So one place where we can, do that, it's kind of hard sometimes to say, where can I put my code? Because Dart code, because like inside the build, there's a return, and that is just a widget with parameters. So I can't put like inside here, generally I can't put a print statement here. This print statement, I don't think that'll work. That's like kind of a log statement. I can't add that here. because again, it's I'm calling a scaffold and it's looking for parameters of a scaffold there. So what I can do is before the return statement inside my build, I can put a print statement there for things. So I can put my print statement here for the size of my list here. Now, if I run this and I want to, the print will show up as my console. So let's bring this up so I can see my console right here. Maybe hit hot reload. Now I'm getting this error here for this. So sometimes, let's see. Oh, I think I missed this semicolon. Oh yeah, because I added that earlier when I was doing something else. Okay, let's hot reload this again. So sometimes you'll get errors and then you'll see this big screen, red screen here. And then you can look and see if you can track down the error. You often have to scroll up in your console and try to find it here. And they're often cryptic. AI can help you decipher this, but I've seen this enough to know length. I'm trying to print out the string's length here and it's not defined up here. So sometimes, and again, it's confusing, but if you're getting errors like this, try not to do hot reload. It might be hot reload only works with some changes. So if I hit stop and just run this again, especially when you're adding variables or something that's not just in the build, hot reload will basically rerun your build, but things that are outside your build, generally, hot reload won't sometimes process. So again, I have to run this manually here, wait for it to start up. And then, sell this, I think it should run okay. Oops. So now it's printing off the size. So what happens is every time this page is redrawn, it prints out the size of the list here. Now I can do something, you have to watch. So if I add this to my list, so let's say I'm going to add a fifth element to my list, and I put that in here also. Let's see how that works. So that looks like that's working too. Sometimes we can run into problems where we add things to the list. Like right now, if I were to, this should actually be in a set state, and you've got to be sometimes careful when you're setting state within a build because that might trigger a build to run again. So sometimes you'll get these things happening where you build, in your build statement, you'll do something that will cause build to be called again here. I guess right now I don't have, I'm adding the list, but I'm not calling set state, so it doesn't know what, it's not updating the calling rebuild again. So, okay. So again, we can declare a list. I just have my list here. How about displaying a list here? I'm going to go into this list view here. And again, I can watch the widget of the week stuff. I like this, just has some simple code here. I'm going to put this code in my class. So I'm just going to grab all that code, and copy it, or hit this copy button. Now, where am I going to put that? So I'm going to leave my center. I'm just going to get rid of my column. So center has a child. So I'm going to get rid of my column. And where does column ends down here, I'm going to get rid of that and paste in this list view there. So I have a center, and then I have a list view, and then there are containers within the list view here. And I think I have that set up. So now if I have that set up correct, I should see my different containers here. And again, I can add more containers. I can make them bigger if I wanted. Update them, bigger now. Oops. So that's a really big container. I could add more containers to this list. Try a different color. Maybe, is there a green? Green. There, now I have a green in here. Now lists will be scrollable if I add things here. Let's do a couple more. Okay. So they're automatically scrollable up and down for this. So again, what a list is I just say list view. I can specify the padding. I could add some more padding if I want here. And then I just list my children, which is a list of widgets here. And so I just list each of my children here. They don't all have to be the same type here. I could replace this. So if I wanted one of these to be like a text widget, I could certainly, or do something like that. I could change this to something like a text widget. And do that. The problem with this is that it is a fixed size list and it generates the whole list. And again, you can walk through, there are different ways of setting this up. So they're going to talk about this list builder in just a sec. So when we're working with long lists, it doesn't work out very well because usually we're building them from some other data structure here. And so like you're reading from a database, and by default, a list will generate or render every image in the list. So if you like have a list of your employees or something like that, and there's 1,000 employees, it'll render all 1,000 employees, even though only 5 of them are displayed on the screen. It takes up lots of memory. So instead, we're going to use a list builder. And this is similar. Remember our recycle viewer from Java? Again, we talked about list view has the whole thing, and recycle view will only generate enough items so that as you scroll, it'll regenerate these things. So we're going to do, look at that. Now, if you remember recycle viewers, they were a pain there. So we had to have a layout for a row. We had to have a planet adapter. We had to have this planet holder. And if you remember, and one thing I will point out is in the planet adapter, we had 2 things of code there. One, we had an on-bind view holder, which if given a position, could draw out an item there. So given a position would draw that. And the other one was the item count would be to get how many items are in the list. So we're going to see kind of the same thing, but a much nicer syntax with lists here. So if I look at this, this example here of list view, this is a list builder. So I'm going to declare these 2 arrays. I mean lists. I keep saying arrays here. So I'm going to add those to here. And then I'm going to put this list view. I think I need that much of it. If I need, well, we'll do that, and then we'll get an error and we'll clean that up. Okay, so now going down to my list view, rather than saying list view, I'm going to say list view builder. And actually, I can just modify this here. So I'm going to get rid of all the children here. Oops. Again, here are these children. I'm going to get rid of those. More children. And so here's my start of my children part here. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to get rid of the padding. So all I have is a list view. I'm going to change it to list view.builder. And it's going to require a couple things. In fact, I think if I click on it and show context, it'll add the required argument is an item builder. So I'm going to put that down here. It also generally wants an item count. So I'm going to add this item count in here. So the two parameters we generally specify here are the item count and then the item builder here. So the item builder, you're given an index very similar to here where we did Java, where you're given a position. So again, we have an item count, and then here we're given a position where we're saying, how do we draw the widget at that position for this? And that's where our item builder is going to be here. So here they do a container. So in here, we're going to return a container that is going to get our entries from our array list up here and our color codes from our array list up here and display those. So if we look at that, let's see. I'm going to rerun this again because I think I added stuff outside my class here, my build. So I don't think hot reloads are going to work. So let's see if that will work. Okay, so here's my list now. It's showing my entry A, B, C in my here. And I could add, so I could add more values here. I could say add more items to both arrays. Like that. And let's see if hot reload will do that. Yeah, I don't think so, because again, I'm running it there. For this. Oh, and I'm not putting a comma in there. So try that. There. So this is what a list builder does. Let's try to do our own list builder now. That's what I like to do is like, okay, we tried out the sample. Let's try to do one. I declared this list. I'm going to get rid of this. I declared my list here with some words in it. Now, the list builder, I'm going to want the item count. I want to use my list. What did I call my list? I called it my list. So the number of elements is just my list dot length. And then the item builder here is, I'm just going to return a text field here. And say something like that, just to see if that works. I'm not even going to use the index to start with. So now it'll just say testing for my list. I have 4 things in my list, 1, 2, 3, 4. What if can I print out? Well, first, rather than just printing out testing, can I print out testing and then add the index? I think I have to do a 2-string there because it needs a 2-string. Let's see if that'll work. So then I'll add that. Now, rather than doing the plus here, remember, Start has this new way of doing this. I could say testing and then just do a $sign index to print that out. So now it'll print out each value here. What if so I have my words. What if I want to grab the item from my list? So I'm going to say testing, and then I want to say $sign, and then it's putting in my list of index. That's what I want to do here. So now it'll just display testing 1, 2, 3, 4, the words from that list up there. So again, a list builder, we say list view dot builder is our builder. We specify an item count, and then that should be the size of our array or our list, sorry. And then item builder here has some weird parameters. One of them is the index, and then we define how do we display a widget for that. And again, right now I'm doing text. What we commonly do is do more, there are a couple common widgets. Let me go back to my common widgets here. So for list views, there's one called a card and one called a list tile here. These are common ways of doing this stuff. So here, let's do a list tile here. So this text, I'm going, let's see if I can, if there's a list tile. Nope. Okay. So I'm going to, rather than return, I'm going to return a list tile, and list tiles generally have a title and then maybe a subtitle if I want. I'll just do the title there, and I can also have an on tap sort of stuff. Now I have to go watch. Let's see, return. After return, I think I need a semicolon. Then I think it'll be happy. So now if I look at this, this will be displaying these list tiles kind of this way. I can also add a subtitle. And have another widget like a text widget here. There. And I'll have a title and a subtitle. Another thing I can do is put this in a card instead of this. So a card has a child, not a title. So again, if I want to change this, I could return a card. And then I'd want a child here, and I don't have a subtitle. So this will be some kind of a better wrapping of this sort of stuff for this. And again, sometimes, you want to make this a little prettier, so you can decide what to do. I'm going to, I think, grab this center stuff and just ask AI, can I add some space, spacing around the text and make each card prettier. Paste in my code, see what it suggests. And one thing you can watch is if it's using stuff that you don't know, you can ask it to explain, or you can say, can you do it with this sort of stuff there? So again, here's my center I'm just gonna take this now and put it in here and then look at it and build from there. So I'm grabbing the center until down there. So let's see what it's doing. Okay, so it put little padding around here. I have shadow boxes here, and I have my items there for that. So I have my card, I have margins, and I know edge inset symmetry. I have an elevation that shows the depth it's floating up here, and I have rounded rectangles, and I have a curve for my rounded rectangles. I'm setting my color here. So, sorry about that. Okay. So I have a color, and then I have a child here, and the child is a text, but within the text or around the text, I have a padding to add some padding around it, and then to do some font stuff inside the text, I have a text style where I can set the font and weight and stuff like that. So it's not bad here. So let's do one more thing here. I have my list where I have a button here that's incrementing some counter. I want to add items to my list. So rather than adding to the counter here, I want to add things to my list. I can say my list dot add and add an item to my list. I'm just going to add 5 to the list here. So now if I click, if I wait for this to do a hot reload and I click here, I can add 5. I keep adding 5. So maybe I don't want to add 5. Maybe I want to say something like item, and then, yeah, let's do counter there. So now if I go here, it'll add each item to the list for that. Okay. Questions on lists, list views? They're a little complicated, but I think they're much simpler than the recycle views in that we had in Java. So you can see. And again, you certainly don't have to do all this fancy formatting. I just like to sometimes make it pretty when I'm done with AI. So I haven't updated the code for the list, the learning activity. We'll do a pizza list thing. I haven't updated the GitHub template yet. And same with the assignment. I'll try to do that today or tomorrow so that you can work on those. And we'll do the learning activity in class on Thursday. Sound good? All right. Oh.